At
Welcome
Brightorium
to The
classes.
Explainer. Today we are taking a fascinating look into the ultimate biological survival game. We're going to explore the incredible playbook animals use to ensure their species doesn't just survive, but literally thrives against all odds. So, have you ever really wondered why babies are so similar to their parents? I mean, why a puppy looks exactly like a dog, or a kitten looks like a cat? It seems obvious, right? But this simple little question actually points us to the most fundamental mechanism that keeps every single species alive on Earth. Okay, let's dive into this. The answer to that question is reproduction. It's the process by which living beings produce young ones of their own kind. But think of it this way. Reproduction is really nature's ultimate workaround to the unavoidable fact that, well, all organisms eventually die. It's basically how life hits the copy and paste button to defeat time. To grasp how this all works across the animal kingdom, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the secret to survival, then examine strategy 1, the egg layers. We'll take a quick detour into shapeshifters and life cycles, followed by strategy 2, live birth. And finally, we'll wrap the whole thing up by exploring the parental care spectrum.
All right, section 1, the secret to survival, why reproduction matters.
Before we look at how animals reproduce, we've got to understand exactly why this process matters so much. Here's the harsh truth. All organisms die after a certain age. It's an inescapable rule of biology. So reproduction isn't just about making cute babies, it's the absolutely vital, existential process required to carry forward the existence of a kind. If young ones aren't produced, an entire species will just vanish when the current generation dies off. It is the literal secret to survival.
Moving on to section 2, strategy 1, the egg layers, or as I like to call them, Team Egg. Now that we know the stakes, let's look at how this highly successful survival strategy works out in the wild. An egg is, honestly, incredibly efficient engineering. It's essentially a self-contained survival pod. The hard outer shell provides vital protection. Inside, you've got the yellow yolk serving as a built-in food supply for the growing embryo. And surrounding all of that is the albumin, the white part, which cushions and protects the baby. It's a perfectly designed mobile nursery. And Team Egg has a wildly diverse roster. This strategy isn't just limited to one type of animal. Birds, insects, reptiles, fishes, and amphibians all rely on laying eggs. But what's really fascinating is how they handle them. Birds, for instance, actually need to keep that growing embryo warm, so they sit on their eggs to provide heat, which is a process we call incubation.
But hey, birds aren't the only dedicated parents on Team Egg. Check out this completely surprising fact about crocodiles. We usually think of them as these fearsome predators, right? But they are incredibly protective parents. They actually make a nest for their eggs right on the ground to use the warmth of the sun. And here is the really amazing part. When the eggs hatch, the mother gently gathers the tiny babies in those massive jaws and carries them safely to the water. No way, right?
Okay, section 3, shapeshifters and life cycles, magical transformations. We're going to take a little detour here and focus on the dramatic, almost magical changes that some egg-laying animals, especially insects, go through as they grow up. Let's start with the simpler 3-stage life cycle used by insects like grasshoppers and cockroaches. It starts with an egg. The baby that hatches is called a nymph. Now, it looks a lot like the adult, just smaller and missing some features like wings. But because insects have hard outer skeletons, they can't just stretch out as they grow. So the nymph has to physically shed its skin several times, a process called molting, until it finally becomes an adult. Now, let's see how this builds in complexity with the 4-stage life cycle, which we see in butterflies and houseflies. This is a much more dramatic story. They start as an egg, but hatch into a larva, like a caterpillar. After eating constantly and growing super plump, the larva builds a hard case around itself called a cocoon, becoming a pupa. Inside that little isolation chamber, it completely transforms over a few weeks before emerging as a fully formed adult.
Just to make sure we have our biological terminology locked down, it's absolutely crucial to distinguish between these two intermediate stages. A nymph essentially resembles the adult parent. It's really just a miniature wingless version. A larva, on the other hand, looks completely different from its parent. It actually looks a lot more like a small crawling worm.
The sheer scale of this biological shift is seriously one of nature's greatest spectacles. A crawling larva, like a caterpillar, looks absolutely nothing like the beautiful flying adult butterfly it's eventually going to become. And all of this extreme reshaping happens completely out of sight, hidden right inside that pupa stage.
So the crucial point here is that this extreme change in form, from that tiny crawling worm-like larva to the magnificent adult, is called metamorphosis. It's a totally natural process of growth and development, but the word metamorphosis literally translates to a complete shapeshift.
All right, section 4, strategy 2, live birth, bypassing the egg.
Let's pivot away from the egg layers and shapeshifters to introduce a reproductive playbook that bypasses the egg-laying stage entirely. The animals that utilize this strategy are primarily mammals, and to be in this exclusive club, there's a strict biological checklist. Mammals must give birth directly to live young ones, rather than laying eggs. They also have hair on their bodies, and they feed their young with their own milk. It's a very specific set of traits, and it connects us directly to this material, because, well, humans check every single box on this list.
But nature's rules always have fascinating exceptions, don't they? Think about it. Whales and dolphins live entirely in the water and appear completely hairless. Yet they give live birth and feed their young milk, so yep, they are mammals. Bats fly in the air like birds, but they're mammals too. And in an amazing twist outside the mammal family, some species of sharks actually retain their eggs inside their bodies and give live birth to miniature adult sharks. Biology is just always full of surprises.
Finally, Section 5, the parental care spectrum, after the arrival.
Getting the baby into the world is really only half the battle. Now we need to examine the vast differences in how animal parents treat their offspring after they actually arrive. Nature basically offers two extreme ends of this spectrum. On one side, we have the lay and leave approach. Fishes, lizards, and turtles generally ensure their eggs are in a safe place, and then they just vanish. The babies are entirely on their own from second one. On the other side, we have the high investment approach. Mammals and birds spend immense energy keeping their babies warm, feeding them, protecting them, and actively teaching them exactly how to survive.
To see high investment taken to the absolute extreme, just consider the kangaroo. Some animals have evolved highly specialized forms of parental care. This mother has a literal built-in baby pouch. Instead of leaving a nest, she carries her baby safely on her own body, wherever she goes, for several months while it grows.
The formal definition for these pouch-bearing animals is marsupial. Animals like kangaroos, koalas, and wombats fall right into this category. They give birth to highly underdeveloped young, who then instinctively crawl into the pouch, attached to a milk supply, and basically stay there until they're finally mature enough to feed themselves. It is maximum parental protection.
Well, that brings us to the end of our biological journey today, and I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question. Nature offers two very distinct paths for survival. You can either produce thousands of eggs, abandon them, and just hope a few beat the odds. Or you can have just one or two babies and invest years of intense care into guaranteeing their survival. Both have worked for millions of years. But looking at the world around us, which survival strategy do you think is the ultimate winner? Thank you so much for exploring the Animal Playbook with me today on The Explainer. Keep observing and keep learning.